The inspiration behind the Alexithymia article involves my counselor and a few years later, one of our clients. I think I was probably around 9 months working with my counselor. A wonderful man, uh, very attuned, always began the session with, "Hey, how you doing, Tony?" Because he honestly wanted to know how I was doing, but come later to learn that he's really wanting to know how well I know I'm doing. All right. So, how are you doing, Tony? And for 9 months, my answer was always the same. Well, I'm good. It's kind of like a standard greeting. You meet someone walking along and you know them. It's like, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm good. How are you?" That's just kind of our cultural thing. And after 9 months, I think he was getting really tired of it. And so he challenged me. He said, "Tony, every day, every evening, when you're checking in with your wife, I want you to identify a feeling." I was like, okay. It was a good challenge. He knew me well enough to challenge me with it, and I would take it on. And what he knew, and what I was later to learn, is that when we respond that way, chances are we really don't know what's going on in our inner state, or we're trying to avoid that conversation because we really don't want to explore it, or we don't want to feel it. So he knew what he was doing. He was setting me on a course to learn. So I began that evening, and I was checking in with my wife. We were using Phanos. What's the first letter? F. Feelings, right? So I was sitting there, I was pondering it. I was like, what's a feeling I have right now? And I was working on it, and I just ended up blank. I couldn't come up with anything. And I needed to use, I think that was the feeling wheel in order to identify feeling, because I wasn't going to give up. But what I really wanted to do is to be able to do it without a resource. It's like, okay, that's one day. I'll try again tomorrow. And then in the next day, we're checking in. Blank. I've got nothing. And I'm trying to figure it out. And this is happening day after day, and to the point where it's getting frustrating because I don't understand why I can't do this. And I should be able to do this. So it becomes like an inner shame monologue. I didn't want to resort to just using a big feeling, like one of the big five, mad, sad, glad, lonely, or afraid. I felt like that was taking the easy way out. And I knew that my counselor, what he really wanted was me to explore things that were more granular in my emotions, like I feel perplexed, or I feel pensive today. And to be able to look back throughout the day and notice how I felt about those situations. That's really what he was trying to get me to do. So I struggled with that for 3 months. 3 months before I was able to identify a feeling without using a resource like a feelings wheel. And I was so excited when it happened, and I still remember it to this day. But I still had that frustration of what is going on that I can't do this on my own. And I did not know why at that time, but I stuck with it. And every day when I was checking in, whether I was using a resource or not, I was identifying a feeling and trying to explore how I felt about how my day went or certain events in my day. And over time, it got easier and easier and easier. And as it turns out, this is a very important part of recovery. I just didn't realize it. Because once I was able to identify my feelings easier, well, that makes empathy so much easier, because empathy is all about being able to connect to others' feelings by knowing how they feel for yourself. So I was able to better communicate with my wife. I was better able to empathize with my wife. And so it has so many more benefits than just sitting here and saying, yeah, I feel perplexed. So this is the real journey to recovery, and I didn't even realize. And it didn't come until a few years later when my wife and I are coaching, and one of her clients mentions, "Hey, I've noticed my husband really can't empathize when I'm have strong emotional feelings." And I looked up this word. What I found was this thing called Alexithymia. Have you ever heard of it? And, and so we started digging into this. We had never heard of it, but it's a phenomenon where someone does not have a strong ability to identify their own emotions. Well, this has huge ramifications on recovery, and there's reasons why it happens. So it's an important aspect of recovery. And an additional detail that came with it was it makes it so much easier to affirm your spouse. But the trick that I learned, and I'm going to end this with giving you a tip. If you're using Thanos, uh, you have feelings, affirmations, needs, and so on. Do the affirmation first. It's kind of like apnos, because it's so much easier to identify a feeling when it's following an affirmation. So when you're saying, I noticed something that you did today, da 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 da, and that just makes me feel, oh, and it just comes right out. It's almost natural. So there's my tip for you. So when you're doing check-ins, uh, do your affirmations first, as you always should. You should always begin your check-in with an affirmation of your partner. But realize this is such an important aspect to recovery. It's absolutely essential to get to know your inner self.